What's up guys, my name is Ace, and now that we finally have the multiplayer reveal for Modern Warfare, and I managed to play the game at 2 separate events, and I can finally share my thoughts on this, today I'm going to be sharing my honest opinions on this. I'm going to share what I like about the game, as well as a bunch of stuff that I really don't like about Modern Warfare. Before we get into this, big thanks to Activision for flying me out to attend this event and capture this gameplay early. They also put me up at a hotel. Without that, I wouldn't have this early gameplay or these early impressions to share with you guys. Although I do want to be very clear here, this has had no impact whatsoever on my impression of this game. I am going to be brutally honest towards the end of the video about the things that I really don't like about Modern Warfare so far. Now, a couple things to keep in mind as I go through this. This is based off of a limited and early build of the game. Things are subject to change, and I do hope some things will be changing throughout this. But this is just my initial impressions based on my experience with it so far. So let's start it off with the good things, and I can get through the good things a lot faster than the bad things, simply because I'm basically going to say, I like this, I like that, whereas when I'm talking about something that I don't like so much, it will require much more explanation. So just because you see that the bad section is going to be much longer than the good section, it doesn't mean that I'm hating the game overall, it just requires more explanation. So let's kick off the list of the things that I really liked about this game. First up, graphics. The graphical fidelity of this game is great. This is the biggest leap forward by far that a Call of Duty game has ever taken in the graphics department. It looks amazing in my opinion, and I'm really happy that we have those changes. Going along with that, the animations as well. I really like what they've been doing with the animations. It's much more on the realistic scale without actually impacting the gameplay feel. It still has that really familiar Call of Duty feel, but the animations are massively upgraded and they look a lot more realistic. Going along with that, the audio fidelity is incredible in this game. It sounds very realistic. They've done a lot of things with audio that's really, really good as far as fidelity goes. There's a few things I don't like gameplay balance-wise when it comes to audio, but we'll talk about that towards the end of the video when we're looking at the things that I'm not a fan of. Another thing I generally liked, at least within the 6v6, 2v2, and 10v10 modes, is the map design. It seems like there's a decent variety in map design. It's not necessarily strict 3 lanes, although there are some maps that are strict 3 lane. And I like that even with the limited maps that we saw, we're already seeing some variety when it comes to that, and this is excellent in my opinion. After that, I really like what they've done with the gunsmith system. The actual menus themselves, the UI, is beautiful, really easy to navigate. We don't have those stupid cursors anymore like we have in Black Ops 4. The menu system is awesome based on what we played. And getting back to the gunsmith, I really like what they've done there. You can really deck your gun out and make it look exactly how you want it to look. There is so much attachment variety. They said there's roughly 30 to 60 attachments per weapon. This is just a massive leap when it comes to weapon customization, which is great to see because in a first-person shooter, that's what counts. That's what you actually see on your screen is the weapon. So I'm really glad they went with this gunsmith system, and overall, I really enjoy it. Same thing goes with the operators. I really like how you choose your operators for each side. The operators are purely cosmetic. They all have the same hitboxes and everything. There's no abilities attached to them. So you can look exactly how you want to look in-game. You're not stuck looking a certain way because you like a certain ability. After that, I gotta say the highlight for me gameplay-wise is absolutely that 2v2 gunfight mode. This is currently my favorite mode to play. It is a ton of fun, lots of adrenaline, really, really intense modes, and also super fast-paced as well. I really, really enjoy the gunfight mode, and I think I'm going to be playing a lot of that this year, as long as it gets proper support and we see like a decent selection of maps, for instance, and perhaps some gameplay variety as well. Next up on my list here, crossplay. It looks like they're taking crossplay in the right direction where it's input-based matchmaking, so if you're on console playing with a controller, you're not going to be playing against mouse and keyboard users. However, if you like using a mouse and keyboard but you don't have a fancy gaming PC, you can plug that directly into your console. There is native mouse and keyboard support, and that will put you up against other mouse and keyboard users, so you'll end up in PC lobbies. On the other end of that, you can plug a controller into your PC, and presumably, at least based on what we've seen so far, it will put you in console lobbies. So if you're a PC player and a certain mode has completely died off on PC, you can just plug a controller in, and there you go. You can find games, no problem. Next up on the things that I liked about this, and this is more so getting into the gameplay again, this is the recoil. They have increased the recoil this time around. I believe this is the most recoil we've ever seen in Call of Duty. Yet it is also predictable recoil, and you can definitely control it. So I think there's going to be a nice addition of skill gap in this particular area, and I think it meshes well with the faster time to kill, which I also like about this game. It's nice to return to that more traditional Call of Duty time to kill. It's not so fast that you die like in the blink of an eye, or at least most of the time I wasn't dying in the blink of an eye. I often had time if I took damage to get behind cover and get out of the way. However, it's not nearly as slow as Black Ops 4, which I think is, based on what I've played so far, it seems like they found that sweet spot for me. The next thing that I like so far, this will require a bit more playtime and everything, is the way they've handled perks based on what I've seen. It really does truly feel like perks in this game are perks. I didn't run into anything that I would consider to be a crutch. If I had no perks whatsoever, it wouldn't have changed my gameplay by a massive amount, and I think that's a good thing. Perhaps as we get more gameplay time on that, we will find out that certain things will end up being crutches, but at least based on what I've seen, perks are simply perks. After that, something that I enjoyed, as long as it stays relatively limited, is the night vision gameplay. There are going to be a few night versions of the maps that are in this game, and within those, night vision is essentially required. Without night vision, you're putting yourself at a pretty big disadvantage, I feel. I like how they've handled it, where there's a little bit of trade-off. You don't fully aim down sight, and also when you are aiming down sight with night vision goggles, you will have that IR laser that enemy players will be able to see if they're using night vision. And I think it does add a lot of depth and variety to the overall gameplay. Like I said though, I wouldn't want this popping up too often, like perhaps even keep it in a separate playlist, because it isn't really that traditional Call of Duty feel, and that's generally what I would like to feel, is that traditional Call of Duty gameplay. So if it's constantly night vision maps, then I feel like that could take away from the game, but it seemed like from the presentation they said that it's going to be quite limited when it comes to these nighttime versions of the maps. Now that's a list so far that I have of things that really jumped out to me that I really like about this game. Obviously, there's more things that I like about this game, whether that be like really small, minor details, or more general things that are kind of hard to put words to and describe. The overall feel I really do enjoy with Modern Warfare when it comes to actual like character movement and everything and animations. Still feels very familiar like Call of Duty, and I like that about this game so far. Now let's get into the things that I didn't like so much, or maybe I feel was missing from this game. I'm going to do my best here, and I encourage you guys to do the same when you see something you don't like, to be as constructive and respectful as possible. This is the best way to get developers to listen to our thoughts. Be respectful, but don't hold back on your constructive criticism. And I'm really not going to be holding back about this first one. I have made a video about this before going into really good detail. In this game, in core game modes, you do not get a minimap until you earn either a personal UAV, which is a 2-kill streak, or a standard UAV, which is a 3-kill streak. This is, without a doubt, my least favorite thing about this game, and it's a major sticking point for me. I really dislike this design decision, and I hope they will consider making a change to this in the future based on player feedback. I do want you guys to experience this for yourself in the beta before jumping on things too much. But having said that, I do feel this was a terrible gameplay decision. I do not support this whatsoever, and I really feel like it takes away from the gameplay. I know a lot of people are going to call me a whiner or a crybaby or something, but this is a big deal to me, and I think this is going to turn a lot of people away from this game. It seems like they're just making a change for the sake of change, and to be very clear, the main reason I want the minimap is not to see the red dots and to chase the red dots. The primary reason I want to see the minimap is so I can see where my teammates are, which lanes my teammates are looking at, and also the minimap is a great tool for spawn flips and big picture thinking. For all I care, they can completely remove the red dots from the minimap and give us that minimap back. I would be totally fine with this change. Also, for the people that think this is a good change because they don't want people just chasing those red dots, we have the compass feature that they added that allows you to chase those red dots. So red dot chasers will still be red dot chasers. All they're doing by removing the minimap is dumbing down the game, reducing the skill gap, and I think this is an absolutely terrible design decision, and I really hope they consider changing this for the future. I think this is actually one of the reasons that out of all of the game modes I played, I enjoyed 2v2 the most, because in 2v2, a minimap isn't really relevant. It doesn't really matter all that much in 2v2, whereas for other modes, it's a really big deal, and I've got to say, I didn't really enjoy myself overall because of this change. To add to this, I did notice when I was on a good team with people earning UAVs consistently, the game was a lot more fun. The moment you're on the other side of that and your team is not earning UAVs, you're going to have a much harder time, and it's going to lead to a lot more snowballing in games. And I'm going to have to cut myself off here. That's all I'm going to say about the minimap in this video. If you guys are interested in hearing my much more detailed thoughts on this, I will try to remember to leave a link to my minimap video down below. So next up on the things that I didn't really enjoy with this game, this is the 20 versus 20 mode. I really didn't enjoy myself on this mode. It felt like it was trying to be Battlefield, but it did a worse job of being Battlefield. I didn't really have much fun at all playing this mode. It really just felt like a big hide-and-seek fest on a way too large map. Even for 20v20, the map was way too large. The ATVs on that map handle horribly. If you use trigger stops, you can't use the ATVs because you have to use R2 in order to drive those at full speed. So when it comes to that as well, I don't think I will ever touch that 20v20 game mode. I just didn't enjoy myself with it. Next up on my list here is attachments. There's something to do with attachments. In this game, the attachments have pros as well as cons. So as an example, you could have a stock that will increase your aim down sight movement speed, just like stock in the past. However, at the same time, it will reduce your aim down sight time. Now, of course, this does require more testing. I would love to see exactly how much of an effect these things have. But after really thinking this through, there's actually a lot of situations where you're going to be better off just not running attachments on a gun so you don't hurt it in any way. And you can absolutely make a gun feel so much worse by adding attachments onto it. And I don't really like that, especially because the attachments change the look of the gun so much. And if I want a gun to look a certain way, but it makes the gun so much worse for me and my playstyle, then I'm never going to run the gun in that way. So even though I like the overall gunsmith system and the UI and how it changes the gun's looks and everything, the fact that you have cons attached to attachments, I feel kind of defeats that purpose of the gunsmith system where you can design the gun how you want it to look. Moving on to the next thing that I wasn't a big fan of, but again, this is going to require more testing, especially with various attachments. The sprint out time did feel a little bit on the slow side, especially for SMGs. Now for assault rifles, it was probably in a pretty good state. However, I found when I was using SMGs, it didn't seem like I had a huge advantage when it comes to sprint out time. It didn't feel like I had a much faster sprint out time than assault rifles, and I was often finding that I had to adapt my gameplay into a much more slow-paced, pre-aiming sort of a gameplay, and I didn't really like that too much. Again, I'm hoping perhaps in the final build of the game, we're going to have access to more attachments that will have a greater impact on our sprint out time, as well as our aim down sight times. But my initial impression is that it was definitely a bit on the slow sides, especially for SMGs. Next up, footstep audio. Like I said, the audio in this game sounds incredible. It sounds very realistic. There's a lot of audio fidelity there, and it does sound amazing. However, I found myself in-game, unless I was basically standing still in a quiet room, I wasn't hearing footsteps at all, and when you combine this with the fact that you don't have a mini-map, this really strongly encourages you to move extremely slowly around the map and sound whore hard. Combine that with the fact that there is no option to use dead silence, and I think we've just got a horrible mix here that is going to lead to a lot of those very undesirable playstyles, like people just camping in corners and waiting for you to run by. Anytime there's any gunfire anywhere around you, there's all this reverberation of noise, which, like I said, is realistic, but that makes it so your awareness, it just goes out the window when it comes to footstep audio. Moving on to the next thing, this has to do with the settings, at least on console in this build that we had access to. I don't feel like there are enough settings for the console build of the game. Most specifically, the thing that I really want to see is the ability to have a separate aim down sight sensitivity. I had a very hard time getting used to the ratio of aim down sight versus hipfire sensitivity in this, and we don't have that option to customize it. Whereas on the PC build of the game, if you plug a controller in, you do have those options available to you. So I really hope they make those same settings available to console as well. And this is a very big deal to me as well. This fundamentally changes how you're able to interact with the world and your overall control of your character. I felt there was a bit of a disconnect after getting used to having separate aim down sight sensitivity values. I really felt there was a disconnect between my thumb and what I actually wanted to happen on screen because we don't have this separate aim down sight sensitivity. So like I said, this is an early build. I think there's definitely opportunity for them to add this, and I hope by the time we get to the beta, they will have this added to the game because I'm really gonna miss it if it's not there. Another thing that I wanted to mention here that's pretty minor and it's gameplay related, this is calling in certain streaks, like airstrikes for instance. Instead of pulling up a map and dropping your airstrike where you want it, you have to actually get a line of sight on where you want to drop that airstrike, and you have to laser that spot. And when you do that, it does take a couple seconds to call that in, and I found most of the time when I was trying to call in an airstrike, I would get myself killed doing it, and it got to the point where I just stopped using it, and I don't think I'll ever use these airstrikes in the full build of the game if this doesn't change. There is far too much risk attached to calling it in, and while it is much more realistic and it looks really cool doing it, I feel like this is one of those areas where they're sacrificing gameplay balance and gameplay fun for realism, and I don't think it's a good design choice. This brings us to the next thing on my list that also relates to kill streaks, and this is the fact that we have kill streaks. Now, like I said in my video from a couple days ago, I do prefer score streaks over kill streaks, but kill streaks aren't the end of the world. However, I also noticed that they didn't add point streaks into this game. So that means if you play the objective, like capturing a domination flag for instance, that doesn't help you towards your streak at all. There is no individual incentive for you to play that objective. And as a result, I think there's going to be a ton of players that go into objective modes and completely ignore the objective, and I really don't like this. So at the very least, I would love it if they would include point streaks, so at least you get 1 point towards your kill streak if you capture the B flag, for instance, in domination, because I really didn't feel any interest in playing the objective while playing domination. The next thing that I really wasn't a big fan of, and again, this is a really minor thing, this is when you take damage in this game, your vision goes black and white. I feel like when you get shot, you're already at a disadvantage enough being shot and being hurt, as well as having that red jelly on your screen. Why do you have to make our screen go black and white as well, making it more difficult to see where our enemy is that's shooting at us, especially if they're at a bit of a distance? Again, this just seems like a change that is very unnecessary and only serves to hurt the gameplay overall. At least that's my opinion on this. I really didn't like that feature. And the final thing that I have on my list here for the things that I wasn't really a big fan of, and this is something that could very easily change in the future, this is the fact that there's a respawn delay for every game mode, and I feel like that's completely unnecessary. Obviously, for some game modes like Capture the Flag, for instance, respawn delays make a lot of sense. However, when we're talking like Team Deathmatch or even Domination, there shouldn't be a respawn delay in my opinion. One of the reasons that a lot of people like Call of Duty is you get that fast-paced, non-stop, constant action. If you get killed, you hit a button, you're back in the fight. With respawn delays, even though it is just a few seconds, I feel like it does take a little bit away from that experience. But with that, that's going to wrap it up for this video on my initial overall impressions of Modern Warfare based on my playtime so far. To be completely honest with you guys, the lack of a minimap in core game modes, that's a very big sticking point. That's a very big deal to me. And I found myself not really enjoying the game outside of 2v2 a whole lot. I feel like adding that minimap back, even if they want to remove those red dots unless you have a UAV up, that would significantly improve this game for a lot of people, and it would prevent a massive amount of backlash that I feel is going to be happening throughout the beta. I realize there are some people that are okay with this change or even like this change, but I feel like this is going to be a major deal breaker for a lot of people, and it's the type of thing where not removing it doesn't really hurt anybody, but removing it is going to chase a lot of people away. With the exception of the minimap and also the fact that I didn't like 20v20, the rest of my complaints and issues are relatively minor, I feel, at this point. I think there's definitely a lot of potential with this game, and I'm really excited to see what happens with the beta and what adjustments they end up making, because I think this does have the potential to be a really great game. Having said that, in the state it was in when we played it at this event, I did have a hard time enjoying myself outside of 2v2. But of course, that's just my opinion. I'd like to know in the comment section below, based on what you've seen and heard about the game so far, what are you guys thinking about Modern Warfare? Do you like what you see? Are there things that you don't like? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, just a quick reminder, I am partnering with Kontrol Freek for a Modern Warfare giveaway. I will leave a link to that down below if you guys want to sign up. You could win yourself a copy of the game or some great Kontrol Freek products. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time. Yeah.